So this is what came out first things first. This right here. See all that? That's rusty water. Before you say, hey dude, that's oil. I'm gonna tell you, dude, that's not. I promise you. Oil doesn't dry, but this rust water definitely does.
What's up guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new, welcome. If you're coming back to see what I got going on, same as last time, just a little different, you know, another day, another something else that's broke down. So what we got here today is a 2008 Yamaha Grizzly 660. Camo edition. This was brought in for a coolant leak. There's a little barb that comes out of the thermostat housing, and it's part of the head itself. It had rusted off completely. So what we've done to remedy that is I have drilled and tapped with a 1/8 inch pipe thread, chased it in there with a brass nipple. So that takes care of that issue. Now, when I pulled the thermostat out, it was full of so much crud. I mean, it looked like black oil, but it wasn't oil. It was actually just iron oxide at its purest, which is rust. And since it was not present with oxygen, it never got orange. It just stayed black. Now, there were some spots that were orange where it had externally rusted, especially out of that drippy fitting that was on there. That's all been fixed as far as that goes now. I pulled the water pump. I figured it'd be just as bad, and I was right. Looking in there, it's just all kinds of gunk and nasty in there. Now, this water ran black. So that's why I definitely wanted to record this, because this is something that I have not seen in all my years of doing this, whether it's big equipment, you know, excavators, skid steers, or smaller things like side-by-sides and four-wheelers. I've never seen coolant this bad. It had overheated a couple times, nothing bad. Like he kept an eye on it, made sure, you know, he didn't let it run hot to do any engine damage. But I guess Yamaha issued some recalls shortly after this model year about some overheating problems, and they blamed it on some of the shrouding and paneling, so they had some things for that. But here we are today, 2025. He's a veteran, so I want to make sure I get this back and rolling to him and get this right back to where it belongs. I just had to take a moment to briefly explain what's going on here, because I'm about to show you the flushing of this system, and I'm going to flush it sideways, upways, downways, everywhere I can, through the radiator, through the engine. I mean, there's not a whole lot of steel in this system, but the thermostat and some places around, some of the couplings and side towers, the radiator, for that rust to be introduced. So it has just really contaminated that system. But I want to show you how nasty it is.
Can't forget this little guy. Nasty. Look at that. Got one hose here, and there's a bolt-in hose that goes here that I've already taken off. I'll show you on the new one. There's only 2 bolts that hold this water pump on. All these other ones hold the pump itself together. So this bolt here and this bolt here are the only ones that come out. The only thing holding it in from here is an O-ring fit that just seals between the engine housing here and the water pump. So you just kind of give a little wiggle. Work this O-ring fit in here. Just find you a good spot. A little bit of firm pressure. Just like that. And just like that, you've got that right there. And when you're putting your new pump in, just make sure that this slot here is clocked right. So just make yourself a reference point off of here anywhere or down wherever you want to go. Make sure you just line it up in your new one. That way when you go to push it in here later, it's just going to fit over top of this flat shaft in here that drives the water pump. So here's your one little nipple on the back, nipple on the front, and here's your bolt in. Now you'll have to get a new O-ring for in here, and then the fitting that goes on here is just the hose that comes out from the radiator. And this is the other half that comes from the block itself. So this is comes from the block drain, and this goes to the radiator. Your telltale weep hole, in case your water pump has failed, you'll start seeing water come out of this, which is attached to the hose that dumps out somewhere around the front axle. And then this little guy is the one that goes all the way over right in by the thermostat. So the other one was rusted off, and this one's about to do the same. So good thing we went ahead and changed the water pump as well, because this is steel, just kind of press fitted into this aluminum housing here. So the other side's got a brass nipple. New one here the new one we're putting in has a new fitting, so we'll be good on that one. Make sure you get you an O-ring for this one to replace as well, and then I'll show you that pipe housing on the new one. So side-by-side analysis here, we've got the new pump on the right hand and the old one on the left. You see I've already pre-clocked the slot, so I've got that kind of close to this one here, and then this is the bolt in I was talking about. So you see how this has one little Allen screw here that unbolts right out of this one. There's an O-ring that sits in there. So I replaced the O-ring in here, and I've got that bolted in there with some Loctite, just the blue, because we don't hate anybody. We're going to use blue. And then we'll go ahead and reinstall this and make sure all my little tubes are on where they're supposed to go. This one that goes in the back, I'm going to put it on first, because when I flip this over, it's kind of hard to get to. So I'll put that little bitty hose back on there, and I'm going to oil up the new O-ring, put it on here, make sure my surface is clean in here, and just give her a little press, and we'll put everything back together. All right, I got my new pump O-ring on here. This is oiled. I got my little drain hose put back on here. Now this aftermarket one here, the Barb was a little bit bigger, so I couldn't use my factory hose. Just a short piece of fuel line did the trick. Put that on here because it's about to get tucked away and hidden behind here. As you can see, you can't even see that little guy no more. Got that clock wrong. Here we go. Got that set to where it's down now. There we go. Okay. And I've cleaned up this little bit here. I know this is all pitted, but this is where the hose actually is clamped around this smooth section here. So what we're going to do is get this guy back where it goes. I've already cleaned this inside surface here, knocked anything loose off here. I don't want any of that debris inside my crankcase. I've got this thing clocked how I need it to go, and we're going to go in. I'm going to shove this up there. You can't see over here, but I'm going to go ahead and put the end of this started into that hose up here, because there's not a whole lot of movement with that hose. So just the end of it in there. Go ahead and get this rolled. That's right here. Okay. All right, now my surface is touching against the O-ring. Give it a little wiggle, a little pressure, and pop. There's the weasel. Right there, right there. That's good. You notice this casting is deeper and this is shorter, so you got two different bolt sizes, long and short. They're here. Two different sizes. Clean these up, put a little bit of thread lock on. I like to use thread lock on almost all these off-road machines. and mostly anything really that's you don't want coming out with vibration equipment is not as smooth as some vehicles, and some vehicles are rough also, but for sake of argument, we're using thread lock. And I know my spline's lined up because this popped all the way in until it was flush with the casting. So we're flush there, flush there. Notice this thing's swaying a little bit while I'm working on it. I've got it on a little overhead crane here. Overhead winch. Crane would signify that it's big. It's a little winch. So down comes our return hose here from right around the thermostat. Put that back on. All we gotta do is attach our two hoses here. I got the one in the back here, which I want to get that tightened up and put all the way on before I throw this one on, because this is going to block my access. Just one little hose clamp. I know I'm off camera here, but all I'm doing is just tighten a little hose clamp around this pipe. And the hose that comes from the return from the block. Yeah, I've got bigger pliers somewhere, but this is doing the trick. Awesome. Go ahead and put my little reservoir overfill hose back on. There we go. And that's it. That's all there is to the water pump on this. Is these two bolts, two large flow hoses, one fail drain hose, and then this guy here, which just runs all the way over to that barbed wire place coming out of the housing right next to the thermostat housing. So, or coming out of the head rather, where the thermostat housing goes in. So that's it. One little piece of lost knowledge I want to share with you is anytime you're working with aluminum and steel fasteners, there's always going to be the natural enemy of corrosion. You see on the base of this here, this white, that's what happens when aluminum oxidizes with steel, and it's like almost like nature's thread lock. Now, I still use thread lock, right? And I'm going to finish cleaning these off here. But the thread lock is going to lock the threads in a way that the corrosion was. The only difference is it's a lock that is breakable without breaking things. So it's a chemical bond from this versus the aluminum. And the thing is, you know, if you've got thread lock in here, it's not going to corrode and basically weld itself to the steel of the bolt. So just a little trick there. You want to use thread lock on most of your engine parts, but especially when you're going from any steel fastener into aluminum. So this is, you know, the blue thread lock is the devil, you know, and corrosion is the worst. So you just do what you can to try to avoid problems later. We've got the new O-ring on here on the thermostat. What we're going to do, make sure our little bubbler is on top. Clock at 12 o'clock. Set that dude right in there. Make sure she's nice and seated. Drop our housing back on here. Now it's an O-ring seat, so you're not torquing to tighten or crushing the gaskets. All you're gonna do is snug it both sides evenly. I usually do by hand first. And then I'm still gonna use the one hand method. Do not use two hands. You're just gonna use one hand. Just grab her. Just grab it like this. Just kind of work it back and forth. And you go just until they pretty much just bottom out. Just like that. And then one-handed, give them a little tighten and a little tighten. That's it. You don't need to torque these down. You will break stuff. And usually with your hand like this, you're tightening it to about spec anyway. I think most of these are like 25, maybe 25 foot-pounds. That even sounds high. Maybe it's 16. Only like 16 foot-pounds. You can pretty much do that with one hand, so that's kind of what I go for. Just don't be stupid. That's it. Just like that, you replace the thermostat. Now, of course, all you gotta do is put all your plastics back on and refill the system, get all your air pockets out, but you guys know how to do that. And if you don't, I have to make a video on it, I guess. So on something this small, you don't need to vacuum fill, but if you got the tool, you got the time, it's never a bad idea. But all I'm gonna do on this one is get everything put back on here, fill the system with coolant. I wanted to interject here. Before I put coolant in the system, I actually filled it with just hose water, let it run and warm up, and left the radiator cap fill off. That way she could just kind of boil over whatever was left in the system. Went ahead and let it get hot until the thermostat opened up, started moving fluid through, let it kind of just keep boiling over a little bit. Not like a rolling boil like you're making spaghetti, but just enough to where the fluid started to expand and kind of just really just skim drain out of the fill. So once it was hot and I knew the thermostat opened up, engine was warm, shut it off, did a drain on the system to get some of that remaining stuff that might have been lodged in there, dislodged so it'd come out. Got that done and then refilled the system with coolant. Did the whole process over again, just ran the engine until it came warm. Thermostat opened up, moved fluid back through, and the fluid looks great. I mean, it's actually just this beautiful green like it was always intended. So she's good to go for that. But then after everything was said and done, the system doesn't leak and it's not overheating as it's sitting there. The fan kicks on, the fan kicks off. So that tells me that the system is reading the temperature climbing, kicks the fan on to cool it, and the fan kicks off when it's reached its temperature. So the cooling aspect is successful. Granted, it's only this week, 40 degrees or so, so it's not like it's in the middle of summer, but I'm pretty optimistic that this is going to take care of all of its problems. And then we'll be good to ship it. So thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next one, all right?